We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to This Song Is Yours, the podcast where we explore the art of songwriting, celebrate incredible artists, and dive deep into the stories behind the music. I'm your host, Simon Fink, and as always, thank you for joining us. Our guest today on the podcast is beloved Australian singer-songwriter Liz Stringer, an AIR award-winning artist and a staple of the Australian music scene since 2006. Liz has built an incredible career through both her solo work and her collaboration with Dyson Stringer Cloher. While she's long been known for her work in indie and rock, Liz Stringer's brand new album, The Second High, sees her venturing into a new sonic world incorporating soul, jazz and funk influences. Recorded in London with producer Beni Giles, who's worked with artists like Lianne La Havas, this seventh record almost feels like a reset for Liz, showcasing gorgeous, immersive soundscapes that push her artistry into an exciting new territory. Now, in today's episode, we are chatting with Liz Stringer about The Second High and how she knew she wanted to take a different creative path this time around. We discuss the experience of working with Beni Giles, how they crafted these beautiful sonic textures, and what initially drew Liz to songwriting in the first place. Now, we want to say a huge thank you to Daisy for her help with today's episode. The Second High by Liz Stringer is out right now, and we've left links in the show notes where you can buy or stream the record and follow Liz across her socials. Now, while you're there, please make sure to follow us across all of our socials and subscribe to this very podcast. If you are feeling generous, please give us a like or leave a review. It all helps. Now let's get into it. Here is our conversation with Liz Stringer.
Sweet as sugar, oh, bitter is the lime that falls from the tree. There is no taste that I dare waste now.
Please welcome to This Song Is Yours, Liz Stringer. Liz, hello. How's it going?
Hi, Simon. I'm good, thank you. Very well.
That is very, very good to hear. Thank you very much for coming to have a chat with us today about this incredible new record from yourself. We're very excited to kind of get into it with you today about The Second High, which is the record that is out now when people are listening to our chat. Firstly, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. It feels really exciting to finally have it out there. You know, I've sort of been spending a lot of time with it on my own for a long time, so it's nice to people finally get to have their own relationship with it. Yeah,
of course, it is a gorgeous record. I believe it is lucky number 7 for yourself in terms of your solo records and coming out. Is there still that similar rush when you're putting out new music and getting people to finally kind of be able to hear what you've been working on for the last little while?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's an interesting process, isn't it? That you kind of have, you have this all to yourself and you have a relationship with it. And then, you know, suddenly, I know that the analogy is used a lot of your kids going to school or whatever, or getting married or, and I don't have kids myself, but I do have a lot of song babies and I do, I can relate to that. It does feel a bit like there's a bit of letting go that has to happen. Yeah.
100%. It's a really fascinating thing, and one thing that we've discussed with a lot of different songwriters on this podcast in terms of it's to reuse that analogy. These kids are going to school, but it's also a funny thing because realistically, you've kind of been sitting with these kids for possibly a few years now and kind of got to sit with them and learn them inside out. And then there's also, I don't know whether this is the right analogy that we should have used, but it's this other thing. I imagine that you're working on different musical children at the moment as we speak as well, now that this record's out. So it's a very funny kind of thing to be putting out a record.
It is. And you're always a bit ahead of yourself as far as writing songs. And so, yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, I think the last record I put out, First Time Really Feeling, there was quite a long gap. There was like 3 years between making it and putting it out for various reasons. And this one, by comparison, has been fairly a kind of shorter gestation period. but it's still, you know, it feels very, I moved to London last year, and it was a massive year for me in a lot of ways. And so time has become, I mean, I can only kind of explain it as feeling like it feels like years, and it also feels like I just made it. No, so in that sense, it's just, I'm excited that it's kind of, you know, that once it's out, I feel like then I can really move on and do other things. I don't feel bad about making other babies, so to speak. Yeah.
We've definitely, next time for the next album, come back on. We'll definitely work out another analogy so it doesn't sound as odd to anyone that is listening along to the podcast. It was very exciting to hear that you kind of had made a bit of a move and obviously changed up locations for recording this record, and I think for living as well, just in terms of being over in the UK. I guess firstly, before we get to the nitty-gritty of the record, and I do want to talk about that and recording it over there, how have you found the move? How has it been musically as an artist? Have you found that it's influenced the way that you work in a big way?
Look, to be honest, the first year was really about kind of settling in, and, you know, I don't have much earning capacity over here as a musician. I've been living full-time as an artist for many years now, but this is just kind of a new place for me. So it's been, you know, I had to go back to hospitality. I had to like really kind of weather the storm a little bit this year, and it's been very challenging. You know, the idea was to move here to find some partners for the album and release over here, and kind of, you know, make more of a fist of it, which we couldn't do with First Time Really Feeling because of the pandemic and everything being so uncertain at the time. So I didn't even release that in any other territory. And so, yeah, I mean, London, as everyone who's been here, particularly anyone who's lived here knows, it's an intense place. It's huge. It's intensely busy. It's very expensive. It's the weather's shit, you know. it's like it's a challenging place. It really is, and I knew that it would be. But I think a lot of the years really just been absorbing the shock of the relocation and dealing, you know, honestly dealing with a lot of kind of rejection and kind of knockbacks for people wanting to work with the album and work with me, and it's, you know, that's being really honest about it all, and it's I finally, after a full 12 months, bit over now, have felt like I have found my feet here. But it really it wasn't sort of, I think I naively thought it's like, oh, I'll go to all these gigs all the time and I'll sort of get really inspired, but it was more like, I'm going to have to work 40 hours a week and, you know, be too knackered to go and do anything after that. That was kind of the reality of it. But, you know, that was my choice to move. I knew, I did know that it would take a while to settle in. And so I've tried to kind of, I've recently kind of have come back into writing and feeling more like a musician again, which is great.
That is very exciting to hear. Obviously, like any change, it takes time to like find your feet in some sense. And I'm glad to hear that, although it has taken some time, that you are kind of back there. And I'm very curious to kind of see, again, not to get too ahead of ourselves. I know that we're here to talk about the second high, but whatever kind of future, I guess, output that has as well. The second high, what a gorgeous, gorgeous record.
Thank you.
Of course. It is, having listened to your music previously and always been a fan, I was curious to go into this record having, you know, read little bits of press and bits and pieces here and there along the way. And in preparation for today, we were very lucky enough to have a listen to the record. And I was, and I always hate to sound like a little bit, I always hate to sound a little bit hyperbolic in terms of that it's disingenuous, but genuinely was flawed in terms of what I was hearing. There was like some beautiful sonic soundscapes going on. Your voice suited a number of different kind of sonic elements that I maybe hadn't previously heard or didn't think, or, you know, maybe I've missed along the way. But yeah, I think that this is almost like a, I don't want to say it's like a refresh, but I think this is a really fascinating new album, as well as sonically stunning as well. For you, to begin with, was there a thought of wanting to, I guess, not push the envelope, but I guess test the sonic boundaries of what you had been working with and what you wanted to work with?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, I did. And I think, you know, the album is predominantly written on and performed on keys, so piano and organ and stuff and synth. And I've always, as an artist, everything's been guitar based, and I've really, you know, I mean, I love songwriting, and I'd always kind of worked within a kind of a frame sonically that involved a lot of guitars and all that sort of stuff. But I've always played keys a long time before I played guitar, and I've also always listened to a lot of different music. And I think, for whatever reason, well, I think because I was in Melbourne during the pandemic and we were locked down for so long, and I spent a lot of that time holed up in my room writing and finishing demos, mostly in piano. And I just kind of, I wrote like all these like dance songs and pop songs and soul songs and all, like really kind of different stuff that I love. Like I love, there's so many genres of music that I've loved since I was a kid that I've just has never been reflected in my music as like Liz Stringer, you know. So I definitely wanted to do something different. I wanted to kind of open up my own spectrum of how I was writing music, and I also wanted to make an album that sounded different, and that's why I sought out Beni Giles, the producer, who made engineered and co-produced a couple of records for Lianne La Havas in the UK, and I loved even his mixing is really amazing, and his use of organic instruments to kind of create this really modern idiosyncratic world that's kind of what I wanted to do with him. And so yeah, it was definitely I made a point of wanting to do this differently, just for my own stretching myself as a musician, basically. Yeah,
100%. I imagine that, as we've said, like the output of Liz Stringer, there's 7 studio records, there's the collaborative one as well. I imagine that you want to continue to grow as an artist and not put out the same record each and every time, and that kind of it's what's the expression? It's like, it's the muscle that you have to continue to use. It's like you use it or you lose it in terms of songwriting and having that ability to try new things. With Beni, what was the process like in terms of approaching, and I guess not even convincing, but you've gone with this back catalogue that maybe is something a little bit different, and then wanting to be like, this is me, but also let's not do anything like that, and let's try something completely this way.
Well, yeah, I mean, I sent I'd had quite detailed demos, again, just out of pure boredom in Australia. I think kind of during the pando, I'd made all these demos that had, so a lot of, like, I would say at least 50% of the songs were arranged and kind of home mixed by me. So I was able to sort of introduce myself to him through this new stuff and say, this is what I'm trying to do, just cooler, like make it sound like it's not something I did on Logic in my bedroom. So he did, listened to some other stuff of mine to get a feel for what sort of who I was as a musician. But it was, I sort of went in there quite clear. We had a similar vision for it. So it was quite easy to kind of, felt quite natural to just kind of to do it with him without kind of having to be prescriptive or say, like, I want it to sound like this or whatever. It just kind of, it was clear from the start where it kind of needed to go, I think. Yeah.
I love that. Did you find the process, I guess, in terms of how it was built and how it was done, as you said, I know quite like meticulous demos that have been built for it. So you've already got a really good foundation for these songs. But in terms of then taking them and then working with someone who you haven't worked with before, was there maybe more so like what was the process like in terms of like then being able to then build upon them? And I know you said make them cool. I think they probably were already a bit cool. I think there's a little bit of self-doubt there. But in terms of what was it like working with Beni in terms of then achieving it to what we've now heard on the record?
Beni was really, I really, really, really loved working with him. He's very, I don't sort of throw this term around at all. I don't know that I've used it maybe to refer to a couple of people that I've met, but I really consider him to be like a musical genius. Like he played based on the record. He's like just a hyper musical person and also a very experienced kind of gifted sound engineer and producer. And I think he what's the question again, Simon? I just like wandered off on a tangent.
No, that's a good. More so like, I guess, having sent the demos to Beni and then being able to kind of give him the vision, did the experience match what you thought it would in terms of then turning it into what we've heard on the record?
It did, yeah. And in fact, you know, there are even a couple of the original demo sounds or takes that we kept. Like I think there were a couple of songs that were quite bare bones and we kind of built them together. But there were some, he was like, I think this arrangement's really good. I just think we should like put live drums on there and play everything live. And, you know, so yeah, it was a real, it was sort of a mixed bag as far as building things from scratch and then sort of using the foundation of what was already there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I think that we had, he's just really good at getting really, really beautiful organic sounds, capturing organic, like the drums sound beautiful, I think. And not a lot of my records in the past have been quite layered and I love that really dense kind of production. But this one was a little bit more, I really loved how much space he had in his mixes that I'd heard. So we tried to, and he sort of just naturally kind of did that. He's just like really great at placing stuff. And yeah, it was a great process. Mm.
Very glad to hear that. One thing you just mentioned there in terms of the spaces and the in how the songs kind of ended up, I think is a really interesting thing to notice. I think that one track that I really loved, it kind of came on earlier in the album. It was When You Met Me. I think there is this gorgeous kind of for lack of a better term, it is space. It is this lovely arrangement. It kind of is built slowly, and then by the third part of the song, it just kind of then almost overflows, but never in like a, you know, crashing way. It is, there's almost like a terribly cliche, but a cathartic sense to when it finally does blow over. Wondering whether you might indulge me. It might be a little bit selfish of me, so I apologise. But in terms of telling us, I guess, either what inspired the song or kind of where that song came from.
Yeah, I think that one, I'm pretty sure that was one of the kind of home sessions. And I just think I wrote it about a couple of experiences that I've had of, you know, kind of men being interested in me, but because they like the sort of the shiny artist part of me, but they're actually just a bit full of shit and not really, like, not able to really commit or follow up or, and I just kind of would always make me feel really, really shit about myself. But then I kind of realised, like, oh, you guys are just, you're just trying to exercise some demon in yourself and you're just kind of doing it at me, you know. And it has happened a few times with me, and I think I just kind of, obviously I attract that kind of behaviour. So I had to do a bit of soul searching there. But I also, it was sort of like a nice way for me to let that stuff go and just be like, well, that's your problem. You know, that's not enough for me, and that's your problem. Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing that. I can sometimes imagine, especially with a subject that is as not necessarily sensitive, but I can imagine it is quite like it is a situation that you've said is quite unique to you. And I very much appreciate you opening up and sharing that with us, because sometimes I could get a very vague answer in terms of like, oh, you know, it's about this. So I appreciate the honesty with that, Liz.
Well, that's all right. And, you know, anyone that's seen me live would know that I'm quite an oversharer, in fact, about about things. But, you know, I'm generally happy to talk about it because, you know, for me, songs are. Oh, I'm really interested in the human condition and the things that connect us, you know, and we all have such similar experiences kind of internally, and it's not necessarily something that we talk about with each other. So things can kind of happen or be felt in complete isolation, whereas really I know that for me it feels comforting, or I feel a sense of connection knowing that other people have similar experiences, you know. And so I think, you know, unless there's something that I'm deliberately trying to protect someone from or that sort of thing, I generally feel like it's like just another step of the songwriting is to be really honest about what I'm writing it about, you know.
I absolutely love that. We are primarily a songwriting podcast. I was wondering whether you might share with us what originally got you interested in songwriting. I guess where did that initial attraction to being able to put pen and paper together and as you said, like comment on the human condition, where did that kind of love first begin from?
I think, I mean, my dad is a retired music teacher, and my whole family are quite musical people. So there were lots of instruments around, lots of singing and just music being made a lot. And so I think that it just, I always really loved like writing stories as a kid. I liked exercising my imagination in various ways, and I think that was, funnily enough, because I played piano long before I played guitar, and that I used to kind of sit down at the piano and like make up music and then, you know, make up songs, and it was a form of play in a way, and of, I guess, escapism, but kind of a more sort of, you know, as a kid, you're not trying to escape yourself quite yet, but I think that's how it started. And then as I got older, I started really writing songs in my probably mid to late teens, and then it's just become it's like writing a diary, or kind of, I love words. I love playing with language, and I love music, and that's, it's such a lovely kind of marrying of two forms of expression, you know, and then the combination of the two creates its own like sort of third prong, you know. So it's like it's such a rich ground for putting yourself into, and I think so it started very young.
Do you remember, and you're not at any liberty to share title, melody, whatever it is, do you happen to remember the first song that you ever wrote or tried writing?
Not really. I do have this hilarious, there's a cassette tape somewhere that exists of my dad playing guitar and me making up songs as like a 3-year-old or something. Apparently that used to happen quite a lot. Dad would just play these chords and I'd sing, and there was something to do with the Cat and the Fiddle, apparently, that I was that I was writing a song about, quote unquote. So that was probably my earliest work, Simon. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The earliest parts of the Stringer repertoire, yes.
Yeah.
I love that though. That's more cute than I think some of the a number of people we've spoken to. When they mention the first one, it's always maybe something around the teenage years and something about, you know, lost love and a bit of a cringe and they don't want to share that. So I think the Cat and Fiddle, that's kind of a good one. That's a good one to start with. Yeah.
Yeah, well, notice how I bypassed the cringy teenage by going straight for the toddler era. But yeah.
Killed it.
That is the truth.
I know that there's a lot of fans excited that, although, as we've mentioned, that you are in the UK, you are coming back home in April for a run of shows in support of this record. Curious as to whether there's a certain track off this new album that you're looking forward to most, to kind of giving it its live debut or playing in front of a crowd.
Well, I mean, apart from the Second High and Coming Home, I haven't really played any of them live. I played those two quite a bit in 2024 with my English band. But it's going to be the debut we won't do all the songs on the record. I think I appreciate that it takes a minute for people to kind of get their head around it. And I'll be coming back to Australia probably at the end of the year, to do a much more extensive run of gigs, because this is it's only four shows. So I think I'm looking forward to playing To Survive, which I wrote about an incredible friend of mine who's going to be at the gig in Melbourne. So I think that will be quite special. Yeah, and I've sent him the song, he's heard it, and he really loves it. So that's thank God. It's like, sorry, it's out. So get with it. Yeah, I think that'll be fun. I have quite a new band lineup as well, and I'm looking forward to shaking things up a bit live, just for myself. Yeah.
I think there's always something very exciting about being able to take both new and old material out on the road, because you've got that ability to, I guess, play around with the arrangements a little bit or change with the structure, the instrumentation. So, look, very excited to whatever way these songs do arrive in April. Very excited to see these shows, and we'll make sure that they are posted in the podcast show notes for people to purchase tickets to.
Thanks.
Of course, I do want to ask, we usually do kind of wrap things up asking our guests what they're currently listening to. Wondering whether there is anything that is currently on high rotation for yourself, Liz.
Excellent question. I'm really loving Sam Fender, who is massive over here, and I'm assuming in Australia he's really, really great young songwriter. I'm just really happy to hear, and he's really killing it over here. He's doing sort of arena style shows and stuff, and he's such a good writer, and I think it's so good to hear so many people connecting with great songwriting and really great songs. And he's got a fantastic live band. Apparently, there's a lot of saxophone, but I think that's really exciting as a fellow songwriter to hear someone that kind of talented really getting a massive boost in his profile. I think that's really healthy and great. So yeah, and I'm also listening to some kind of older jazz stuff. I've just really gotten into jazz recently. I don't know why. I think maybe it's being in London, or having a few mates that are really into the jazz scene and seeing a couple more gigs and stuff. But just listening to Coltrane and some of that sort of older stuff, and I'm trying to educate myself about jazz, because I think I've had that real kind of indie snobbery about jazz and just it's not for me, and I think some of it I can't come at, but there's an amazing I've seen Audrey Pound, who's a friend of mine, play a couple of times here in London. She lives over here now too, and her record is extraordinary. I've listened to that back to front, and that's just an incredible piece of work. And I think through her, it's sort of she's helped me to open some doors musically, which has been really great. Yeah.
It is really interesting to see both at home and abroad. I know Audrey Pound is one fantastic example, but even then there's a few international artists, and I think different kind of arenas of pop or indie where jazz seems to be kind of coming back into the mainstream a little bit. Who was it?
Yep.
We had Ezra Collective from the UK on the podcast last year, and what they're doing with jazz, and fascinating. So both very, very interesting choices in terms of the Sam Fender and jazz. I think both kind of weirdly work a little bit hand in hand, but fantastic choices.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Of course. I do have to say, anyone who likes jazz, though, is very much going to enjoy this new record from yourself, Liz. It is called The Second High, the seventh record from the lovely artist Liz Stringer. We'll make sure that there are links within today's show notes that people can purchase the record, see you on tour, follow you, see you on tour in the UK or in Europe if that's going on. We'll make sure all links are there. But Liz, thank you so much for coming to have a chat with us.
Thank you, Simon. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.